We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
With global pals, it's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast Backstage episode. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn, and I always love these episodes, Ellen. It's always so good to catch up.
Exactly. I know we've both seen a lot, and I was just telling you before we started recording that next week is our episode about the Tonys, and both you and I were down in the city this last weekend and saw some stuff. So we'll have a lot to chat about next week.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. You saw some great stuff, hear how that all went.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
great.
A lot of fun. We've got Labor Day. I keep saying that. Do not rush the summer. Memorial Day weekend to enjoy. You got burgers going or anything like that, Ellen?
Not too much going on. I think bought like an inflatable swimming pool, just a little kiddie pool for the kids. So I think we'll get that set up maybe this weekend.
Nice. And Mom can put her feet in that, right?
Yes, I will definitely be doing that.
as you wait for the next act to show their face, as it were.
Exactly. Yes, I have 6 weeks to go before I have another kid hanging around.
We should probably do a little, give us the top 3 names for boy or girl. Well, you know what it's going to be. So,
yes.
And then we can all check in, and if anybody can do some write-in too. So if anybody's got names that you really hope Ellen and her husband name the blessed event.
Yep. So if you got some girl names that you like, either theater related or untheater related, we'll take anything. We're very open at this point.
So here. That's on the list for everybody. I don't know why, but Veronica jumps into my mind.
That's one on our list. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
No. I guess we've been at this for a while, Ellen. Just saying. But anyway, everybody take your best shot.
Yeah.
So who knew that this question would elicit so many responses and so great ones?
Many. And yes, and Benita, I had to unfortunately not pick all of the ones that responded because there were so many. I had to edit some of these down because they wouldn't fit in our episode.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Why did you hit it? So the question at hand was, have you ever had to fill in for an actor last minute on stage? And what was that like? And that stemmed from just 2 weeks ago, you and I talking, I had finished my run of Steel Magnolias at Fort Salem. And that was on a Sunday, either Monday or Tuesday. I got a call from a fellow performer from Cabaret, Candy Wood. Could I step into their production? They were going up in a week and a half. And I said, it was really kind of interesting. I did. It was interesting because all of my blocking was mirror image.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a little to set it, you know?
Yeah.
And you've done this too.
Yeah, not to the extent that you had. Just, a very minor role in one show, and then a Shakespeare Monologue at one point where I had to improv a little Shakespeare because I had memorized it the night before and just kind of went up a little bit when I saw the audience in front of me.
Somebody sitting out there, some fussy sort going, oh Lord, I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be said.
Not an iambic pentameter.
Golly gee is not in there. But it's fun. So, but the responses have been incredible, fun, great. Thank you, everybody who wrote in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's jump in. Let's see. Alex says a friend called me up at midnight and said the production of 1776 he was in needed an emergency fill-in for Dr. Lyman Hall the next day. He knew how much I loved the show and how well I knew it, so he thought I'd be perfect. I told him I couldn't possibly, citing that there would be no preparation at all, I wouldn't be ready, etc. I told him it was one of my deepest fears to go on stage unprepared. He asked me one single question: what better way to get over your fear than to face it head on? And I said, yes, The director is so pleased with my work that when the same production needed a permanent replacement for a different role later in the run, he offered me the role. I said yes to that one too.
Bravo. Listen, walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
By the by, and that's great how that worked out. We've had Richard Gatta on as a guest on the podcast before, and many of you know Richard grew up in Niskayuna, and he's been swing before, and he's been a couple of shows, but he's been doing swing for Music Man. And I don't know if you saw his recent post. He's sitting home, he's cozied in. It's 7:15. The phone rings, 8:00. On stage for a track he really hadn't done. Great cast, everybody, it's a community.
It is. I mean, I just saw a Mr. Saturday Night on Broadway, and little did I know, at the end of the show, Billy Crystal, after the applause, pulled out the person playing his daughter and said, "Hey, by the way, this actress, this is her Broadway debut, her first time on the Broadway stage. She was called at 6 p.m. because the primary tested positive for COVID, and she has never rehearsed with me before." There you go. And she was
right,
great.
and having seen the show, the backstory, I saw the very first performance of it at Barrington Stage. When they launched it, it was the first time, in front of a paying house. That's no small role.
No. Yeah.
Bravo.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Well, Kelly says, I had an ensemble role in Urinetown, non-speaking, it's luck. A few hours before curtain, the director called and due to illness asked if I could cover a featured ensemble track, and our choreographer would step into my role that night. So I had to quickly learn some lines and scenes I hadn't been in before, a couple of singing solos, different blocking, Luckily, I had a great cast to help me with the changes, and it went fine. I typically thrive when being thrown into a situation. If I have too much time to overthink it, I can't get out of my own way.
Kudos, Kelly. I love that you thrive in that situation. I personally don't.
Hey, theater's enough, right? Bravo.
As Cassie said, and this is something both you and I were there for, she lost her voice during our run of Shakespeare in Love at Capitol Rep. And she just gave Justin Friello, who is the composer of our wonderful theme song on the podcast, I gave Justin a look and said, I need you to sing for me right now. And without thinking, he just jumped in and sang the soprano part.
You remember, and everybody was like, what? Wow, okay.
It's a little different tonight.
Peter says, yes, I was in a course called Transformations of Shakespeare. For our final class project, we had to stage a scene from a play we read in class. I chose the final scene from Othello. We were setting up for the performance, and a couple of people in the cast were having a discussion about the curse of the Scottish tragedy. One cast member said the name out loud in the performance space 3 times. Well, as class time approached, people came in and took seats, but the man playing Iago didn't show up. Iago. I had one line in the scene as I was playing one of the guards. So I drafted another student to take my part on book, and I played Iago. Come out of my mouth, Benita. And that's why, you see, and that's why I will never say that name of that play again. And if you don't know what we're talking about, ask a friend in theater, because we're not saying it.
Exactly. Even on the podcast, too dangerous.
Right.
Eileen says, many years ago, I was called in to fill in for Catherine in A View from the Bridge at a summer theater in which I had a different role in a different play. I had 1.5 hours to prepare, including getting fitted for some kind of costume and being given basic blocking to write into my script. I had not read the play, and there was no time for any kind of run through or even an explanation of the trajectory of the story. This was a Friday, and I was warned that there would be a full house for that evening's performance. I did my best carrying the script and learning about the character's motivation on the spot, letting the other actors sort of push me around from scene to scene. The audience loves to be a part of this kind of experience, and they were totally on my side. It was both terrifying and deeply gratifying. Fortunately, the actress returned the next day.
I'm sure Eileen was fabulous.
Yes.
But that's quite an experience. I mean, really, To know nothing of something and then make edible hash,
Yeah.
that's kudos.
Mm-hmm.
Joe says, I stood in for Michael in The Pillow Man with 5 days notice. He gives kudos to Jennifer Bart, made a prop Bible with all my lines in it. I didn't look at it once. It was very fun, but super stressful.
That's a big part.
Right. And
Yeah.
think of the creativity and the support that goes on in the stories that we're hearing to
Yeah,
help folks step
definitely.
in and step up.
Yeah. This next one's from Patrick Wright, and if you're a frequent listener, he does our end of year wrap up. So if you're trying to imagine what he looks like, you can watch a video of this for this story. As the director, I was really excited to return for the final performance of The Importance of Being Earnest at Curtain Call, which had a terrific run, only to find out that our dear Cecily Cardew, the super talented and lovely Carolyn Shields, sick as a proverbial dog. She looked green, and we discussed several options when she bravely soldiered on for the first act. She made it nearly all the way through, only missing her last entrance with a couple of pages in the garden. At intermission, we came up with a plan for me to go on as Cecily, realizing my dreams to play a 16-year-old country lass. The cast and audience had a great deal of fun.
Can you just hear him?
Yeah.
Right. I bet. Kyle Christopher West, he of the Fort Salem Theater, he says, this one has my name all over it. About 20 years ago, I was interning at a theater on Cape Cod and was sent on as the Cheshire Cat in children's production of Alice in Wonderland on book with about 15 minutes notice. I don't remember anything other than getting into costume. I then went on as the master of ceremonies in Chicago for Act 2 after the actor became ill and left at intermission. I'd choreographed the show and was familiar with it, but hadn't actively done any of the blocking since the show opened a month earlier. There's more. I was performing as Eugene in Greece, and after 3 to 4 weeks of being in that track 8 shows a week, I got sent on as Duty unexpectedly. A bug must have gone through the cast because the next night other ensemble members were also on covering Rizzo, Sandy, Cha-Cha, Teen Angel, Patty Simcox, plus the actor covering my Eugene track. It was actually a blast. I later swung in professionally for some shows, so this was all a great learning experience to get my brain prepared. My favorite understudy experience was filling in for my husband in Ragtime when he was promoted to a larger role during the run of the show. I'd seen the show and got a put in with no other rehearsal, but it went pretty smoothly. Sadly, it meant I didn't get to see him in his principal character.
I think Kyle knows the meaning of the term, the show must go on.
Yes. Oh, and this next story, Ellen, is a wow, really proof of that.
Do you want to read it?
All yours.
All right, so Stephen says, I was in one of the first West Coast productions of Godspell. Our Jesus was somewhat of a hypochondriac, and one performance about halfway through God Save the People, he vanished from the stage. The number ended, we all turned to where he was supposed to be, there was an awkward pause, and then I launched into his first parable with words to the effect of, remember that story Jesus always tells? We literally spent the next half hour of Act 1 ad-libbing and paraphrasing madly through the script. Well, you know what Jesus always says. Well, those not involved in the specific sketch were backstage madly combing the theater for the actor who disappeared. He was finally located in the alley behind the theater, victim of something resembling a panic attack, dragged back on stage physically by the tiniest female member of the cast just before All for the Best, and completed the remainder of the performance. Longest 30 minutes I've ever spent on stage. This was also in an unair-conditioned theater during a Southern California summer, but the flop sweat on stage that night wasn't from the heat. Second worst experience for a totally different reason. It was a production of Merchant of Venice. I was playing a tiny role in the ensemble, but we were required to be at all the rehearsals. At the Sunday matinee, at the end of the first week of performances, the actor playing Lanchet Gabo very physical commedia inspired performance, made a misstep and broke his ankle, which blew up to the size of a basketball. He finished the scene, we helped him hobble off stage, and one of our staff rushed him to the hospital. He was hustled into his costume. I was hustled into his costume and finished the performance, word and business perfect, and also filled in for that evening's performance.
These are two great stories, and I can only think that thank God for that Jesus took care of Jesus, because otherwise that cast might have, but you got to feel for the poor fella.
Yeah. Oi.
To panic out like that. Oh, and then just the stress of the panic, and oh Lord.
And to recover and be able to get back on stage from that,
right?
That's pretty amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear he's selling women's coats now, but that's it. Jeremy JJ says, yes, once at Curtain Call Theater and once at my own theater. I went on as Ned in The Normal Heart on book, and it still remains one of my favorite roles. On a side note, we had our final dress on Thursday and the tooth started to hurt after tech. Friday, I was in the dentist chair getting a root canal. Picture it, me, swollen face, on painkillers, playing a role that calls for emotions at level 10. Love you, JJ.
Let's see. Mary Margaret says, this past weekend, my 17-year-old daughter, who was the director of her school's production of The Addams Family, was faced with a positive case of COVID on the second night of the performance. Rather than cancel the show and thereby disappointing actors, stage crew, and audience, family, and friends, she stepped in to take over the role. Proud mama moment. She nailed it, and the cast was able to share all the work they've been doing for the past several months.
Bravo.
That's awesome.
Jeffrey Hawking says, I was directing Mrs. Bob Cratchit's Wild Christmas Binge at Confetti Stage. The actor playing Little Nell and Mrs. Fezziwig texted me in the morning and said she'd lost her voice and wasn't sure she'd be able to go on for that evening's performance. I thought, surely she'll be better by tonight. And with all of my rookie director naivete, I didn't put a plan into action of how we'd fill the role. I checked in with the actor as I was leaving work around 5 and oh no, still no voice. I started trying to figure out who'd be able to fill in, and as time flew by, it became more and more obvious that no one else was going to do it. I reached out to the music director and asked her to fill in for the one scene as Mrs. Fezziwig because it was a song and a couple of lines and she was there for those rehearsals, but she didn't feel comfortable going on for the second and third scenes as Little Nell. So since the show must go on, I slapped on a wig, found something to fashion into a skirt, and I went on as Little Nell, all 6'4" of me. I hope he shaved that day. In her first scene, not so Little Nell was to be pushed off a chair. And when I received that push, the hastily placed wig slid off my head and onto the floor. The cast could barely keep it together. The audience was horribly confused, I'm sure. It was a hot mess, but the show went on, and luckily the actor's voice returned and was able to finish the run.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right? These all belong in a book, you know?
They do. They do. I love the simplicity of this next one. Anna says, I had to replace the actress playing Gypsy in Gypsy. I was only 14 years old. What a horrible mess.
There's so much wrong with all of that. But way to go, Anna. Now, it's one thing if you're playing her as a kid.
Right.
But Nicole says, I was asked to fill in for someone for the second weekend of a 2-weekend run, as anyone would likely do. I announced I was going to be in the show, not revealing the circumstances. The person I covered for proceeded to dox me on social media and have her minions message me with nasty comments.
Ugh.
Very, very discouraging, especially because I didn't say anything negative about my stepping in. I did enjoy the experience with the people I worked with and being creative with hiding my dialogue and various props like a newspaper, book, and magazine. And that's just so disheartening.
That is, yeah.
You know, whenever you're going to step in for somebody, you let the world at large know you're going to be in a production.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily, I didn't talk about why I was stepping into the role.
Right.
You know, that's immaterial.
Yeah.
I stepped in. That's it. You've got to the show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
So golly gee.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so sorry, Nicole. I'm sure you were fantastic though.
Yes.
Let's see. Olga says an actor forgot the play was on December 31st at curtain call. People thought the actor was lying at home with a heart attack. In fairness, that show was at an unusual time and it was New Year's Eve. So they had to fill in for him.
Come on. Right? You read the next one.
Okay,
There's
yeah.
a reason. There's a reason.
This one's from Aaron. This is a very recent story. Because of COVID, we're
Right.
getting a lot of stories like this. After 2 years and being part of the COVID shutdown, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which I was directing, finally made it all the way to Tech Sunday. And for such a tech-heavy show, everything went incredibly smoothly. Then the next day, with 4 rehearsals left until opening, we lost our first actor to a positive COVID test. With a few hours to go until rehearsal, I started making what I'm sure sounded like desperate calls to find a replacement for that weekend. Line-wise, it wasn't a very big part, but there was quite a lot of physical movement and almost none of it prescribed in the script. So in between calls, I created a chart of the blocking that I figured whoever I was able to rope into this actor's nightmare could use to quickly learn their blocking, which in the end turned out to be me. Fortunately, I have a really good memory, so I was able to quickly learn the part, even as my anxiety level kept rising, as we would lose our stage manager, a wardrobe assistant, our sound designer / sound op, and our assistant stage manager by opening night. Whew. Despite that, I actually felt relief when all the remaining actors showed up healthy for opening night. Then the next day, another actor tested positive. I must admit, I felt quite panicked as I hadn't had much luck trying to find a woman for the smaller role I ended up playing, and now I had to find a man to replace a bit bigger of a role. Fortunately, the first call I made was to Jonathan Hefter, was a yes to go on stage in 2 hours. So I figured out where I could split those various characters between Jonathan and myself, and I made that same kind of blocking chart for Jonathan. We briefly walked through the play in the hour we had before curtain. With the script in hand, Jonathan went on with just 2 hours notice. Once again, we're all relieved when all the actors showed up healthy on Sunday. Well, at least not yet positive. Over the next week, 3 more actors would test positive, and it looked for a while like we'd have to cancel the rest of the run. But fortunately, Saratoga Arts was able to reschedule us for the following weekend. And thanks to our TD opening night stage manager, Kevin, organizing and doing all the extra work of loading out the show and loading it back in again the following week, and our artistic coordinator filling in for the final performance for an actor having surgery the next day, we were able to finally, 2 years and then 2 more weeks later, able to complete our run of the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, including our first ever sensory friendly performance.
That's like the Home Alone moment, right?
Yeah.
God. Wow. Bravo to everyone involved in that production. Bravo.
Absolutely.
And then sweet Kathleen Carey. I mean, she gets the last name mentioned. Albany Civic was doing Love, Valor, Compassion. Since I couldn't be in LVC, I offered myself as the AD and stage assistant director and stage manager, thinking that would be a good experience for me. Act ran 3 weekends, and the second weekend I arrived before actors on Sunday to do my setup. Then they got word a few hours before the sold out 2 p.m. curtain that an actor was in the ER with a broken toe. Someone said, Kathleen, you can do it. She knows all our lines. Well, I did. I also was the AD and was at every rehearsal, wrote down blocking, and have a photographic memory, which helps me remember lines. So I went on in the role of Gregory in my stage manager Blacks. I rarely had to dip into the script. Steve Barnes wrote a blurb about it in the Times Union, and that night happened to be the night the gay bar, O Bar in Albany, was holding a party for us. I had a lot of gay men buying me drinks that night, and I was there for it. And I can attest to her being absolutely fabulous. And I did joke with her about her petite stature and short hair, helping her in the role. And that's all I'm going to say. But we have laughed about that many times, but she really was. It was a wonderful, wonderful cast. I was on the board at the time, and I was house manager for that performance. So you hear everything, and I just Kathleen is wonderful, is a wonderful performer, and everybody really supported her through that, and I'm sure they drank well that night.
Yeah. And I want to take a quick moment to personally thank Yvonne Perry, who's been on our show before too, because when I did Miss Bennet Christmas at Pemberley, I lost my voice very much overnight. I thought I could make it, and I woke up in the morning, voice completely gone, and contacted Cap Rep. And that night, Yvonne had to go on for me with very little, she had just a couple hours to prepare the role. I think they gave her a book, that she went on, and it's hard to sit out for a performance when you have no choice, but to know that a company's got your back and an actor has your back and they're making the show happen is so wonderful.
Yeah. It's funny when you mentioned that, and you were, by the way, wonderful in that show. You were, and it's before I knew you. We saw company at Barrington Stage a number of years ago, and one of the actors, and I can't remember which role, it wasn't Bobby, was stepping in. I don't recall. Something had happened. Oh, I know the actor's wife had delivered a baby.
Oh.
And he took off that day. And the actor who stepped in was very accomplished, and the cast went on as if it was nothing unusual to have an actor there with the book.
Yeah.
And at some point you stop seeing the book.
Yes.
When the cast goes on, as it were, and the actor just as comfortable as if to say, yeah, I got a book. So what? Let's do this. So I think somebody said that, an audience likes to be part of and know. And then I think for the most part, they cheer you on, don't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
The one part, there's another part I didn't say about Kathleen is when she finished, she was in the green room breathing into a paper bag. She,
Oh, I believe it.
It was quite the thing. So we're going to name Ellen's baby for the next time, I guess, huh?
Sure.
Not to say that you use it, but listen, a few more names and it can't hurt, right?
Couldn't hurt. Maybe there's some inspiring people to name a daughter after that I haven't.
Millicent, Felicity. I'm just a font. It's like the first one. I found it interesting, this story, the one we had about Kathleen. I emailed with her before we started recording and she responded to me. Anyway, the blocking chart. I found that wonderful. How many shows have you been in where you've seen the blocking chart lately? More than as of lately, it's been like, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Very, very clever. Yeah.
And
again, huge kudos. I know we've mentioned this when we talked to Richard Gatta, to all the swings and understudies and everybody that is just working overtime at the moment, making all these shows possible.
Yeah. We saw the numbers that just came out this week. I'm sure you did too. Many of our listeners, Broadway is down almost about half in terms of receipts due to COVID. And it's a challenge. You and I have been in the city, we've seen shows, and there are still a lot of folks who are not comfortable making that trek and sitting in a house. And look, everybody makes their own decision. You choose what's best for you and your family.
But I will say, though, I was intrigued because this was my first trip down to the city since COVID started, that everywhere else in the city, I didn't feel all that great about. But in the theater, hats off to those ushers. They are on it. They are checking between scenes to make sure that people are keeping their masks up, and they will point people out and make sure that everyone is following protocol. And I felt safe because it was taken so seriously.
It's interesting, and I think people don't think, most people don't think beyond their own nose. It's the mask is not just for you. That's
Right.
really not it. That's your choice for you, but it's for the performers.
Mm-hmm.
The house is, yes, okay, you're sitting in the balcony and they're down there. That's fine. But you've got to think of this, the grand scheme of viral load too.
Yeah.
And the ushers,
Mm-hmm.
you're watching out for other people.
Yeah.
And you had a good trip to New York.
Lovely trip. Yeah.
Wait to hear the rest.
We'll talk about all the shows next week. Yeah.
All right, yeah, let us know what you've been seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know what you've been seeing. Let us know what you think Ellen should name that new little baby girl coming her way. And, be safe, be happy, have fun. Go see theater.
Absolutely. We'll catch you guys next week. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. Glad you're enjoying everything theater.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time. It's everything, everything, everything.